watching Morning at NTV.
Thanks for staying with us right here at Morning at NTV. My name is Romeo Kusiku. Of course, we are getting into a very contentious conversation. The cancellation of campaigns within Kampala and 12 other districts within the country. We are going to be taking a look at that story and a lot more. I do have the Executive Director for the Center for Constitutional Governance, that is Sarah Birete. We are going to be taking a look at whether or not the cancellation of electoral activities within Kampala and 12 other districts disenfranchises voters within those jurisdictions. Remember, a quarter of the voting population, 17.7 million voters, are within those districts which were actually cancelled when it comes to campaigning in that regard. Now, let me task Sarah Birete. She's here with me. Very good morning.
Good morning, Romeo, and good morning, viewers.
Sarah, what do you make of all this that is happening? Don't you think the cancellation of campaign meetings within Kampala and these 12 other districts will disenfranchise voters who might go to the polls not knowing what the manifesto of their favorite presidential candidate is?
Well, obviously it will, because voters are supposed to be enabled to hear all the campaign programs, agenda for each of the candidates, and be able to make an informed decision as to who should govern them for the next 5 years. Unfortunately, Electoral Commission made the announcement without any consultation with the candidates. Secondly, they did not put in place options for campaigning in those districts where campaign rallies were cancelled. For example, there should be an arrangement to have maybe media campaigns for each of the candidates. The candidates can join and, appear on a talk show in some of these districts and be able to speak to voters. But they did not put in place any other option. And the third most unfortunate thing, whereas the Electoral Commission had said that candidates can move in these districts and be able to do media talk shows, we saw the unfortunate events that happened in Masaka, where Bob Wine or Honorable Chagulanyi was scheduled to be as per the Electoral Commission calendar. So everything is just upside down. Yeah.
Of course, Chagulanyi says the move was actually instituted to frustrate his electoral activities within these opposition strongholds where he has too much support. Do you think this was a ruse by the state to actually stop Mr. Chagulanyi and other opposition political candidates from sending a message to these voters who are in these strongholds where they have too much support?
Yes, I think with the exception of Umbarara and Buyukwe, largely these are opposition strongholds. The rest of the 11 districts are opposition strongholds. And like you rightly said, Kampala and Wakiso have only, the two districts have above 3 million voters for the next elections. So when you defranchise voters using the excuse of COVID, especially when COVID is not new, but also there are districts with very minor COVID cases like Jinja, like Ruero, like Tororo, and you wonder what the basis is. Yet when you look at statistics from districts like Lila, that was not affected, it has very high COVID cases. So what is the rationale? Jinja, the last 2 days, has had 1 COVID case and 2 COVID cases in the last 2 days. So what is the rationale?
But for Kampala, we've seen a skyrocketing number of cases, at least hundreds of cases, 200 plus on a daily basis. Don't you think Kampala is a hotspot and it was justified to cancel these electoral activities within those jurisdictions?
But what is the cause of COVID cases in Kampala? Kampala cases, yes, Kampala has 50% of the COVID cases countrywide. But what is the cause of COVID cases in Kampala? We see gatherings in Chikubo. We see disregard of SOPs by people as they go about their business. Are campaigns the cause of COVID cases in the top 3 districts? Kampala, Wakiso, and Mukono. Those are the top hotspot COVID districts. Is COVID the case of those COVID cases? I mean, are campaigns the cause of rising COVID cases in these 3 districts? I don't think so. Yeah.
Well, of course, before the cancellation of electoral activities within Kampala and these 12 other districts, the main conversation was about postponing the whole election for the next 3 years. That was a recommendation coming in from the Uganda Joint Christian Council. Postpone the election for the next 3 years, allow President Museveni continue being president during that interim period. What do you make of all those suggestions? Do you think that could have been the requisite suggestion, postpone the election, then just cancel electoral activities in a handful of districts?
The suggestion by the Uganda Joint Christian Council was a good one, but it came way too late. This is the conversation that we should have had as a country in May, June and July, before going for campaigns. So coming 3 weeks to voting, say postpone elections, I think does not make logical sense. But if you look at the reasons that the Joint Christian Council advanced, they were justifiable reasons. One is the need to save lives, which we should have done in May, and the unfortunate rising violence cases and impunity by the security forces. And this, you know, other than the unfortunate killings in Kampala in November, you know, we saw the attacks on media in Ilila, and also in Masaka. Very, very unfortunate. And Masaka attacks on media were very deliberate. Nobody can argue that the police did not target media. We have 3 media journalists in critical condition. That is the journalist of Ghetto TV, the journalist of NTV, your colleague Ali Mivule, and Daniel Taya from NBS. Very, very unfortunate. And this impunity should be condemned.
Actually, for Ali Muvule's case, even before the tear gas canister was lobbed at him, the Greater Massacre RPC, Eno Kabaine, he said, "You are going to be the collateral damage." Then he threw the canister at Mr. Ali Muvule, hence damaging him. Do you think there is a deliberate attack on journalists and members of the media during this election?
You know, then if that is the case for Ali Mivule, people should go to court over malicious bodily harm of a journalist, but also abuse of fundamental rights and freedoms by attacking a journalist doing his duty, a right that is protected under Article 40, Clause 2 of the Constitution, but also the general rights, fundamental rights and freedoms of association and expression, including media to inform and impart knowledge on society. So this should be condemned. So the RPC should be taken to court on 2 accounts: malicious bodily harm of Ali Mivule, but also abuse of fundamental rights and freedoms under the Enforcement of Human Rights Act.
Sarah Birete, we've seen NGOs that are dealing in election observance being shut down. We've also seen human rights defenders who are in that business of protecting people and ensuring human rights, you know, observation being arrested. Nicholas Opio and a host of other lawyers are in jail. You have Noops Hamid Tenua, he's still in jail. And you also have the Human Rights Commission. They do not have a president, meaning the tribunal cannot expedite investigations into the many human rights violations we are seeing. So I'm looking at the vulnerable Ugandan. Where can they run to when they need some kind of reprieve or for justice?
Well, I want to underscore the fact that we are having a very abnormal election, and I think people should move ahead to enact laws with characteristics that should define an election. Because the exercise that Uganda is going through right now does not qualify to be called an election. There is no freedom of expression. There is no freedom to impart information and influence society and enable citizens to make an informed choice. There is no election observation. There is no, you know, the violence and brutalization of citizens. And of course, the way Electoral Commission is conducting itself as if it's a bystander in this whole exercise, and they think that their job is just issue regulations. That is all that it takes in executing their mandate as enshrined in the provisions of the Constitution. Very unfortunate, and the Electoral Commission should be ashamed of the kind of exercise they are presiding over.
Sarah Birete, we are getting information that the Electoral Commission might not be in control of this election, just like the hallmarks of the 1980 election. You had Paul Mwanga, the leader of the Military Council, who was actually largely running the 1980 election. Because for him, Paulo Mwanga said, do not declare any result before I verify it as Paulo Mwanga. So meaning, before the Electoral Commission could verify anything, they had to go through Paulo Mwanga. And then we are hearing hallmarks of situations that actually resemble the same situation in 1980. People like Amurian, people like Robert Chagulanyi, who are saying, Mr. Byabakama is not in charge. It is President Yoweri Kaguta Museveni who is in charge of this election. Do you also buy into this narrative?
No, I think that finally when the clouds settle, it will go down in history that this election is actually much worse than the 1980 elections. In 1980, I have not read any incident where President Museveni was stopped from campaigning. He was a candidate in that election. He was never stopped from campaigning. He was never attacked the way his security agencies are attacking people.
Sarah, he was attacked. A week before the election, he was kidnapped. It's only his brother, Salim Saleh, who actually mounted an operation to rescue him.
Okay, if he was attacked, but on his campaigns, he was able to campaign. That's an unfortunate incident. But if you look at the violence, more than 35 scheduled campaign rallies have been blocked by police. The FDC candidate, Amuliat, has been tear gassed 42 times, leave alone the arrest, going for regular scheduled campaigns by Electoral Commission, and the Electoral Commission is aloof, as if they have no role in ensuring a free and fair election as envisaged in the Constitution. Very unfortunate, very.
But then if we talk to these presidential candidates, Patrick Amuriat, Robert Chagulanyi, and because we got their reactions on the resolution being mounted by the Uganda Joint Christian Council on postponement of the election, and this is what they say. Amuriat was saying that he wasn't condoning with the whole postponement of the election. Robert Chagulanyi also doesn't condone with the whole postponement of the election. If you talk to Mugisha Muntu also doesn't condone with the postponement of the election. So what are the resolutions moving forward? If even the politicians who are saying the electoral process is unfair are not actually willing to stop it in its tracks, what is the resolution moving forward?
No, it's way too late. If you consider investment in an election in terms of time and money, it is way too late to stop an election 2 weeks to voting. It is too late. And I think that is the premise on which the candidates feel that, first of all, their energies and the money put in, because it's very expensive to move around the country as a citizen. Several on the NRM candidate who is using state resources. It is very costly to move around the country, so you cannot say that stop an election 2 weeks to voting. But I think if Electoral Commission feels that they are not in charge, like every citizen is saying, and there's total loss of trust in the election, and I think the violence is going to affect voter turnout very very drastically, and people are likely not to turn up to vote in order to avoid violence. So, and you see, even the excuse of COVID, really, and it's very unfortunate, Romeo and viewers, the NRM party has the highest casualties of COVID, including the top leadership and the deputy prime minister, whom we lost last week. But if you look at the claim that they are the only party observing SOPs, and the conduct of the Electoral Commission to harass the other opposition leaders, saying, not talking to NRM about SOPs. So how are these political leaders of NRM contracting COVID if they are observing SOPs?
Sarah would like to know, what will it take to create a conducive political environment where all political parties can thrive ahead of this election on January 14th?
Well, I don't know, because the biggest dilemma is twofold. One is the conduct of the Electoral Commission, which look as visitors. They appear as visitors in this election. They are bystanders. And then secondly is the impunity, excessive impunity of the security forces. I don't know how the two can be addressed especially since the commander-in-chief is not bothered about the mistreatment of his forces on the citizens. Yeah.
With the whole violent activities we are seeing on the campaign trails, do you think we might be losing on the female vote? Because I was looking at the statistics. 17.7 million voters, 9.8 are almost ladies. Then some 8 million voters are the men. So if we have more female voters than the gents, then do you believe, because of the violent nature of this whole political process, that women might actually stay away from this vote come January 14th?
Well, women and violence do not mix. It's true women are the largest voting bloc in this country. Some of them will not turn up. But also, importantly to note, Romeo and viewers, is that we do not have a COVID plan for voting day. So if you say campaigns are dangerous and people should not get involved in campaigns, how are they going to vote? And how are you prepared to prevent COVID on voting day? Can we have that question answered?
Well, they claim there will be social distancing, hand-washing points will be put in place and so forth to ward off the contraction and spread of the same.
But massive COVID spread in this country started with NRM primaries. NRM primaries that were, lining up. The same way voters will be lining up in queues to vote. And remember, the time for voting is limited. 7 o'clock to 4 p.m. So if you say how many people are allowed to be at a polling station at a given time, and how are you going to control that? 2, what are the measures for preventing COVID spread in this line, in social distancing, in use of, what are the measures? Because it is important to note, Romeo, that other countries which have conducted elections during SOPs, they have used health officials in campaigns. This country has district health teams, county health teams, sub-county health teams, village health teams, and parish health teams. These are the people that should have worked to enforce COVID measures during campaign rallies. And this is what other organized countries are doing. But we issued regulations on how to campaign during COVID, saying the number is limited to 200 people. Who does the check? In other countries, you have Ministry of Health in their protective gear, officials at a gazetted campaign venue with water for washing hands, ensuring that every citizen who enters has a mask, ensuring social distancing of those citizens that have accessed a campaign venue. And then also, it is important to note that as much as we say every citizen should wear a mask, people have not received masks at a taxpayer's cost of money, excessive money, approved by Parliament. Where are the masks? Have you received yours? I have never received my masks. I do not know anybody in my circles who has received government masks. So if we say citizens should wear masks, even on voting day, where are these masks?
Masks aside, Sarah, but there seems to be a zero adherence to the standard SOPs. And because you have Patrick Amreto-Bo, who says even though the Electoral Commission has cancelled campaign activities within these 13 districts, he shall continue holding those meetings. Robert Chagulanyi, the same thing, because they had a program that was already written down. So don't you think the adamance that is coming in from these candidates will only skyrocket the number of COVID-19 cases within this country?
If I had well and read the circular well, Electoral Commission did say that these candidates can be in those districts where they were designated to be. So what was the fracas about Bobi Wine and shooting and attempted murder of people, including journalists, in Masaka? What was it? Wasn't he supposed to be there? He went, attended the church service, and then we see the fracas that ensued with the people in critical condition, with one bodyguard murdered on the way around Busega roundabout by a military pickup. So what is the condition of carrying out campaigns in this country?
All right, Sarah Birete is the Executive Director for the Center for Constitutional Governance, and we've been having this conversation largely centered around the election. I also do have the Director of Communications from the NRM, Mr. Emmanuel Dombo. He's going to be joining us right after this breather. We'll be right back. Staying with us, I do have the Director of Communications at the NRM Secretariat. That's none other than Mr. Emmanuel Dombo, and he joins me right now in studio. The main focal point of this conversation shall be the cancellation of electoral activities or campaigns within Kampala and 12 other districts. Well, Mr. Dombo, very good morning, and thank you for joining us.
Thank you very much, Mr. Busiko, and good morning, our viewers.
Indeed. So let's start on that point of the cancellation of campaigns within Kampala and 12 other districts. What do you make of those recent developments coming in from the Electoral Commission? What is the NRM saying, and how will you be canvassing for votes within these jurisdictions?
To us in the NRM, because we were supposed to be in Mukono, Wakiso, and Kampala within this week, the whole announcement took us by surprise because most of our teams were on the ground doing the mobilization. But given the scourge of given the rest of the scourge, it is understandable that could be the Electoral Commission is trying to, as much as possible, prevent the likely infections that would occur because of what has happened. It's only surprising that without limiting people on how they are going to move, that they only cancel in Kampala. How about other areas? It would have been more prudent to cancel campaigns throughout the country so that people can use media in order to reach the voters, and that would be more justifiable than cancelling only in selected areas. But the Electoral Commission knows the wisdom, and they have better advice from the scientists. They know why they took such a decision.
Well, they believe that there are some unruly political candidates who are not adhering to the standard SOPs. But even after the proclamation of the cancellation of these activities on Saturday, you had on Sunday these politicians, Robert Kyagulanyi, Patrick Amuriyo Toboy, who are saying, no, we still have a roadmap that is clear that we are going to follow, and we shall not be following the directive of the Electoral Commission. Don't you think this is a recipe for disaster? A clash that is waiting to happen between members of the security and these politicians who are not willing to adhere to the SOPs?
Of course, the Electoral Commission should have known better that the roadmap and the calendar was a product of a consultative process, because they asked the candidates to submit the proposed dates, and the Electoral Commission did a reconciliation and allowed them to go and campaign. Ordinarily, it should have been more civil and should have shown a lot of civilization if the Electoral Commission had invited the candidates or their representatives in a formal meeting to make such a communication. It would be more authentic, and it would give an opportunity to the candidates to give in their own feedback, and to enable the candidates to receive first-hand information without going through social media and the other kinds of media like it has been. So, could be in the future the Electoral Commission will do better, but once the Electoral Commission, which has the mandate of organizing elections, has come up with a decision, it is also incumbent on the leaders themselves to go and listen. Because if people are aspiring to become leaders, there is a minimum standard below which they shouldn't fall in the way they conduct themselves, because one, they lead by example, but also the actions of leaders speak a lot in the minds of the people who follow them.
And indeed, I was talking to the Executive Director, Center for Constitutional Governance, Sarah Birete, and she was telling me the move by the Electoral Commission will disenfranchise many of the voters. Remember, these jurisdictions that were cancelled, a quarter of the voting population is from these areas. So she was saying that many of the voters might be disenfranchised, given the fact that these politicians might not be able to reach out to these voters and send those messages.
I wouldn't believe so, because that one is more legalistic than real. Because I look at President Yoweri Museveni. He has been going to regional meetings and meeting NRM leaders, teaching them the message they should go and campaign on the ground when they go on door to door. So, by him moving around Uganda, he does not necessarily go to talk to the people whom he's going to convince to come to NRM. He only goes to talk to the NRM leaders.
Then they do the convincing.
They do the convincing. Right now, it is possible to do the same meetings in other areas using virtual means. You can use the radio, because most of our campaigns as NRM, President Museveni has been using the media. During the leaders' meeting, we book radios and we broadcast live. In the evening, we have been booking all the media and the television so that the message gets people wherever they are. We also use social media. So in the circumstances, somebody to say that the announcement by the Electoral Commission is going to disenfranchise anybody, I wouldn't want to believe so, but I know that the candidates are now supposed to devise means, especially those that have had chosen to use rallies. For us in NRM, we didn't do rallies. And this announcement is not going to hurt us directly. This announcement will prevent us from doing the meetings that we have been doing, and these have been leaders' meetings. But the rest of business is going to continue. We are going to book media houses. The candidate is going to talk to the people using the same media houses that they would have used even if we had visited those respective areas.
Well, of course, Robert Chagulanyi, if you talk to him, Patrick Amuriatoboy, if you talk to him about using the media, they tell you that it's because they're being frustrated by many of the leaders within the various districts where they go to. They cannot access the radio stations. They cannot access the TV stations, especially the radio stations, because the RDCs are frustrating their endeavors in that direction.
The Electoral Commission should have reined in on the overzealous leaders who in most cases overstep their mandate by doing things they're not supposed to do. Because I remember here in Kampala, the RCC, one of the RCCs wrote to the Electoral Commission seeking guidance, and before the Electoral Commission could give guidance, the RCC went ahead to prevent Honorable Amuriatoboy from conducting some of the meetings. I think in such a situation they should have the leading agency in what should be done is the Electoral Commission, and should provide guidance to all leaders, including security, when they interact, on how best the leaders and the candidates should behave and should be conducted and should be protected. But somebody to come up and say people are going to get disenfranchised, that is wrong. And the overzealous leaders who use their offices to prevent the legitimate people who have been authorized under the process of law, that one also sets a very bad precedent. Yeah. It is something that shouldn't be happening.
Well, of course, we've noticed that there's a continued violation of human rights during this whole electoral process. Yesterday, a journalist, Ashraf Kassiri, was injured. Yesterday, when NUP supporters were engaging in running battles with members of the security, we also saw our very own Ali Mivule being injured in the same fracas. Also, Daniel Utaya and a host of other Ugandans who have actually been injured or whose human rights have been violated during this electoral process. Don't you think, Mr. Emmanuel Dombo, that as we veer on to January 14th, many people might stay away from the polls simply because they think there is some violence that might culminate after the elections on January 14th?
One of the things people should know is that the media, the journalists are just messengers. They just come to tell the public or the people what either we're doing, what the security people are doing, and they're only messengers. I would rather think that it's very unfortunate if they are deliberately targeted. But I don't want to think so, because could be it was accidental. Then those ones, the police will have to come up and explain how come that the journalists who are not armed all of a sudden have become a target of these unwanted actions by some of the security agencies. That one is for them to come and tell us and tell the public why has this happened. But to say that people would want to turn away from the elections because of the violence, let me hope that all the civil people, because now there are various areas at various categorization. Honorable Chagulanyi, by virtue of him being a presidential candidate and the head of a party, is a leader. Honorable Amuriatoboy is a leader. And President Museveni is a leader. All the other candidates at whatever level, they are all leaders. Now, the conduct of the elections and the mood and the spirit will depend on the message that each of these candidates wishes to portray within the population. President Museveni has preached peace. President Museveni has obeyed by the standard operating procedures. Some leaders have come up to incite violence and to say they will not abide by the rules. Let me hope that by the time we come to elections, most of these leaders will have moderated their speeches to ensure that there is calm and peace maintained within the country.
Speaking of messages, you have the leader of the National Unity Platform Party, Robert Chagulanyi, who says the reason campaigns were stopped within Kampala and all these 12 districts is because of the strength that he has within these strongholds. Do you believe that's the main reason why the Electoral Commission stopped the campaigns within these areas? That Chagulanyi simply is going home to an area where he has too much support?
I'm not a spokesperson for the Electoral Commission, and the Electoral Commission put up a tweet and an explanation why they cancelled the elections. I have no reasons why I should doubt the Electoral Commission, given what we are seeing in the country, that people are dying. But also, if already somebody has the support, why would the campaign be for? Because if you already have the support there, then why do you want to go there? To go and do what? And demonstrate support, or you go and campaign?
The reason why I posed that question to you, Mr. Dombo, it's because we have some really unverified reports that are coming in. People are saying it is not the Electoral Commission that is in control, but rather your candidate, Yoweri Museveni, who is in control of this election.
The president of Uganda, who is also the candidate for NRM, still has a constitutional duty of maintaining stability and peace in the country because he's the incumbent president. There are roles that he plays as the commander-in-chief, and there are roles that he plays as president of the country. Many people misunderstand when the president talks as commander-in-chief and when he talks as candidate. He's the same person, but I don't think, even when he appoints the Electoral Commission, he approves the money that they use. I don't think he would go that low to ensure that he does as the people may think. But that's their opinion. Who am I to prevent them from thinking what they want?
How do you plan to canvass for votes in these cancelled jurisdictions?
The Secretary General yesterday convened a meeting of the top management, and today the National Task Force, the chairman of the National Task Force, Alhaji Moses Chigongo, has convened the National Task Force to ensure that the technical team provides the modalities on how we are going to adjust to ensure that we circumvent this decision without breaking the law. So we believe that by the time the National Task Force meeting ends, the NRM will have come up with a strategy of ensuring on how best we can do the conclusions of the campaigns, and we wrap up and make sure that we do the winning.
All right, help us counter some of the unverified reports that are coming in that seem to indicate that the NRM Vice Chair for Eastern Uganda, Captain Mike Mukula, is buying off all the NUP supporters within the North and the East. Is this true, or just allegations coming in from the opposition?
This is a campaign period.
Yes.
And what people do during campaign, you are supposed to woo people from the opposition or from the opponents to make sure they join you. During the wooing, people use different methods.
Yes.
Others do conversation, others they use the manifesto, others have an interaction, others can be promised things that will be done for them in the future because it is a campaign. So I don't know what methods Honorable Mike Mukula is using, but once in the NRM he's doing a very fantastic job. And we want to thank you, Honorable Mike Mukula, wherever you are. Just continue doing that because everybody seems to be panicking. The opposition is in panic because they think now the Eastern and the North, it is finished.
Well, if you talk to members of the opposition, Mr. Dombo, they will say it is the NRM on the other side that is in panic, hence bribing of their coordinators and candidates to step out of the races.
No, I think what NRM has done is just switch on the high gear.
Yes.
Because you can see how Mike Mukula is. Because he's the most mobile and versatile person right now in the country, in addition to the president.
Well, he has a chopper.
Because he has the chopper, he will fly to any island, he will fly to any district, and within a day, he will cover a number of things that he's doing. So because of that, when they look at these resources, perhaps at the disposal of Honorable Mike Mukula, they may think that because he's doing so because he's buying, but how much money would you have to buy all those people who are converting?
Go ahead.
So I just want to take this opportunity for me to thank the people of Uganda and those who have seen light and they have changed to decide to say they are going to support NRM. and to appeal to our people that let us abide by the law. That's the first thing. Then let us have a peaceful election. And let us respect lives. The security people, don't hurt and maim the messengers. The media people are only being messengers. They are doing a job on behalf of everybody. And let us make sure that we are civil. The Deputy Inspector General of Police, this General Okech, recently promised that he's going to make a fundamental paradigm shift in the conduct of the police and the security agencies. This is all what people are waiting.
Protecting lives and property.
And
But then we would like to know from you, Mr. Dombo, how best can we create a conducive environment, political environment, where all stakeholders can thrive ahead of January 14th and even beyond?
Everybody should invest in dialogue. There is no peace which comes without people talking. Let people talk to one another. Let families talk. Let people who compete talk. Let opposition parties talk. Let the Electoral Commission call the people who are competing to talk. Unless people talk, it will be very difficult for us to come up with a very conducive environment. And let us all honor the lives, because the lives matter.
Emmanuel Dombo, the Director of Communications at the NRM Secretariat. Many thanks for having made the time to speak.
Thank you very much, Mr. Busiku, and thank you very much, NTV, and good morning, our viewers, and the NRM people, and to those who see that the future of Uganda must be secured. Let us all work together to ensure that we secure our future.
All right, my name is Romeo Busiku, and you're still watching Morning at NTV. Yes, we've been having that contentious conversation on the elections, yes, with Emmanuel Dombo, the Director of Communications, and he's saying the NRM is ready to canvass for votes within Kampala and 12 other districts where campaigning was cancelled. But then you do have the Executive Director, Center for Constitutional Governance, Sarah Birete, who is saying many of the voters within these jurisdictions who are waiting to talk to their favorite presidential candidates might be disenfranchised in that they might not be getting that message from their presidential candidate that they were waiting for after the cancellation of the campaign meetings. But then Mr. Dombo is saying there's always the media. We can use the media to get onto the voter and send that message home. Kampala and all these surrounding environments where campaigns were cancelled have televisions, have radio stations. The voters are well connected to social media. So Dombo says we should be taking advantage of social media and other forms of media to reach out to the members of the public, that is the citizens, the electorates who make up 17.7% of the registered voters who shall be casting their votes on election day. There's also the issue of people who are running away to the villages. Senior officials, Morrison Rakakamba. Yes, how are you, my brother? I was talking to Morrison Rakakamba and about hosting him on the show, and he was telling me, my brother, I'm already up country because I did not know that it could get this serious. So he was worried about the violence that could culminate during this electoral season, and especially as we veer into January 14th, when we shall be holding the presidential election in that regard. So not only him, Morrison Rakakamba, but many other people, civilians alike, are leaving these urban centers off to the rural areas. What shall that mean ahead of January 14th? Will that mean that fewer people will be voting in this election because of the heightened tension? Those are some of the questions that are coming about during this electoral season. Let me know what you think on our social media pages, NTV Uganda, both on Facebook and Twitter. And for all the kings, the queens, boys and girls who are celebrating their birthdays on this particular Monday, the 28th of December, would like to wish you a joyous, joyous birthday. But we also want you to know that you should be cognizant of the fact that the COVID-19 pandemic is still rearing its ugly head. We are now talking about 80.8 million. When I came here, we're talking about 80.8 million cases. But after I leave and I go back to check, I'm sure that number would have hit already 90 million cases, all would have already hit some 81 million cases of the novel coronavirus on the global stage. You do have the United States having 19.2 million, followed by another country right there, which is India, 10.2 million cases, followed by some other country, Brazil, with some 7.4 million cases, followed by France with some 2.5 million cases, followed by the United Kingdom, some 2.2, and Turkey with some 2,047,000 plus positive cases of the novel coronavirus. Our neighbors in South Africa already hit the 1 million mark. That's how bad this situation is. My name is Romeo Busiku. Let's do this again tomorrow, same time, 6:30, all the way to 9 a.m. Have yourselves a blessed morning.